Hi, everyone. It's Mrs. Smith. So Mrs. Smith, Miss Pazalski, and I, well, some of you have Miss Pazalski too, wanted to just say thank you for your honesty and for taking the time to tell us what was happening in your lives during this quarantine period, weird history of life that we're in right now. It was really, really nice hearing from you, hearing maybe how good you were doing or not so good. Um, Please keep in touch with us. We care about you as people and then as a student. So let us know what's going on and if you need anything. Second of all, I apologize. I was a dum-dum on the last assignment. I posted the document wrong, so it was very difficult for you to check which option that you wanted, option you were doing, option 1 or option 2. Totally on me. Today, your activity that you will be doing is you're going to be talking about opinions. So they're going to start off talking about, and I'm going to read this to you, the Scotus Opinions. So the Supreme Court of the United States, what their opinions mean. And then we'll talk about other opinions that we hear every day in the news, media. We certainly hear a lot of it right now on the news. Opinions from all sorts of different experts and journalists and, politicians. So that's what we're going to be reading about or watching, listening to me. And then there's an ed puzzle to complete about why it's important for us to understand who the person is or who the people are that are offering these opinions, what their backgrounds may be, and why they might be offering the opinion the way they are, if there's any bias, they're trying to sell us something, whatever it is. Okay? So if you have questions, let me know. Hopefully all these links work for you here. And yeah, happy Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm coming to you live from my son's bedroom to bring you a Media Moment Mini, Scotus Opinions. Anyone else out there losing their minds? I am. Aside, here we go. It's the Supreme Court of the United States, Scotus Opinions. The Supreme Court has more opinions than you'd probably care to count, or in this case, read. The opinions of the court are published, written documents that explain the justices or a justice's vote and clearly spell out the reasoning for their decision. If you're reading about the outcome of a case decided by the Supreme Court, you're reading the main opinion. The main opinion explains the court's official decision, but the main opinion isn't the only opinion justices write. Influence of an opinion. 2 pieces make up a Supreme Court ruling: the decision and the opinion. Sure, the outcome of the case is important, but the reasoning behind the decision matters more. Justices don't just vote what they think or feel. They interpret laws and the Constitution. A court opinion explains the interpretation and the legal justification behind it. So the court's opinion is explaining why, how they're interpreting the Constitution and why and how they're justifying the decision that they're making. Does that make sense? Okay. Court rulings set legal precedent, principles and guidelines established in earlier cases that are used to determine the outcome of a future case. So they look back and say, okay, what kind of cases came before that are similar to this, and what precedent they set? What were the decisions made there, and how should they be applied to this case? See the cyclical nature there? Because rulings have to be consistent. Justices and judges in lower courts look to past opinions to understand precedent when deciding the outcome of a case. So there's the case, they consult the precedent. They go back and say, okay, what were other cases? What happened in other cases? They make a decision which reinforces or sets that precedent into place so they can then say, okay, all the cases going forward similar to this will be ruled in this way because that's what the Constitution says. That's how we've interpreted the Constitution. Okay. From the majority. When the majority of justices agree on the reasoning behind the court's decision, they issue a majority opinion. Who writes it? Well, someone in the majority. If the Chief Justice is in the majority, he or she gets to decide which justice should author the opinion. If the Chief Justice is in the minority, then the most senior or longest serving justice assigns someone to the task. Ever agree with someone, but for different reasons? Sometimes justices agree that a case should be decided a certain way and differ about why. They may cite different legal precedent or point to other interpretations of the law. When this happens, the court issues a plurality opinion. I probably said that wrong. Who am I kidding? Which explains the justification for the decision from the view of the justices in the majority. A justice who votes with the majority, but for different reasons, can choose to write a concurring opinion, which explains their view and reasons. Okay, so what are you talking about, majority and minority? So you have your Supreme Court, right? If 5 of the justices are voting in one way, that's the majority versus the 4 that are voting a different way. And so they're going to issue a majority opinion, the way that most of them were making a decision, like what was their opinion, explaining it. Now, if one of those 5 is agreeing and saying, I agree with, but I don't agree with it for the same reasons, that's what's called the plurality of opinion. And that justice will have to can choose to write a concurring opinion saying, I agree with this decision, but for different reasons, and these are the reasons why. From the minority. So what about the minority? The justices who disagree with the decision and the reasons behind it. They can choose to express their view and explanation too in a dissenting opinion. So they're going to say, hey, I don't agree, and these are the reasons why I don't agree. Any justice who disagrees with a decision can write a dissent, but not every justice does. Think about it. How often do your parents advertise that they disagree about rules they set at home? Would you follow them if they did? And how likely is your grandparent to side with you about setting a curfew instead of with your parent, even if they disagree? Not likely. Adults unified are stronger than adults divided. It's the same way with the court. Their decisions are clearer and more impactful when all the justices, regardless of their vote, agree to speak with one voice by allowing the court to issue a single opinion. For that reason, a published dissent is a big deal. The justice that writes it feels very strongly that the court has made a critical mistake that they hope will one day be corrected. Occasionally, the basis for a dissenting opinion in an old case becomes the basis for a majority opinion in a new case. And sometimes a dissenting opinion inspires Congress to change our laws. So this is Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Her dissent in Ledbetter versus Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company contributed to the passing of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. So we should look that up to find out more about that. But she's, I love her. She's just awesome. She's super smart. Anyway, opinions. If you have any questions about what I just read, let Ms. Smith or I know. When the court announces a long-awaited decision from a high-profile case, the public and the media usually have a lot to say. Should you take all of those opinions seriously? Maybe, maybe not. The value of an opinion has a lot to do with who's offering it. And the who behind an opinion can help you decide if their take is really worth your consideration at all. In the news industry, you'll see many opinions expressed by people who fall into the following categories. Okay, so now we're just talking about the different kinds of opinions that you see in the media and in the world. We're not talking about Supreme Court right now. So experts. These are people who either have lots of experience with something or who have made a career out of studying something or both. Experts usually have credentials to demonstrate their experience or knowledge, such as advanced degrees or lengthy work experience at well-respected institutions. Being an expert doesn't mean someone's opinion is right or their predictions are 100% correct. But their research, study, or experience may mean there's something to learn from their views. Gosh, if you guys, right now with COVID-19, we see experts on the news all the time. These different doctors, Dr. Fauci, and medical experts that are giving their opinions. So that would be a really good example of, the opinions of experts and how, their predictions might not be 100% correct, but they've got years of research, study, experience. So, we should listen to their views. People with special experience. Different from the experts, these people are in a special position to comment on current issue in a way that most people may not be. It's usually personal experience that gives these people both credibility and often an insight the rest of us wouldn't have. Okay, again, let's talk about what's happening in the news. People with special experience. That would be, the nurses and the people who are in the hospitals helping people who are suffering with the coronavirus, COVID-19. So that would be someone with firsthand special experience to that issue. Does that make sense? So they're not like an expert studying the disease, but man, they're right there. They're helping the patients and they're experiencing it. So hopefully that makes sense. Longtime journalists. Think about what journalists do for a living. Reports. To do a report, you have to gather, process, and understand a lot of information. Journalists go places, talk to people, and even witness events firsthand as they're happening. Now, multiply that across 10 or 20 or more years of a career. That's a lot of knowledge. It's pretty common to see journalists offering opinion and analysis about areas in which they have a lot of experience. So now you may be seeing journalists on TV talking about this pandemic that's happening, and they may be looking back on stories that they covered, whether it was the AIDS epidemic or H1N1 or something that's happened along their career to compare what's happening now to what happened before. So you'll have journalists giving their opinion. And again, I'm just giving you examples so you can kind of put a context around this. Public figures. Former government officials can be in a good position to comment on current government doings because they've got an inside perspective. These are people who once held the same office and dealt with the same issues that the current government officials are facing. So I think that one makes sense. News show hosts. These are the radio and television equivalent of opinion writers. They have their own show or segment within a show where they discuss issues, talk to people, offer their views, and engage in other news-related commentary. So those are news show hosts. That's different than the journalists who have been out in the field reporting, studying, analyzing things. These are ones that are, your figureheads on TV. They're bringing people in to be interviewed. They're trying to get the story to you using interviews and news-related commentary. They're not necessarily it's different than the journalists. So these are the TV or radio hosts. Paid opinion writers. Writing opinions is literally their job. They get paid by the news organization to do it. Look at most websites and you'll see a few opinion columns regularly written by the same person. Often these columns are labeled with the writer's name or some other special name for that writer's series. Paid commentators. These are people who get paid by a television or radio network to give their opinion on certain subjects. You see them sitting around tables discussing or speculating about current events. Often paid commentators used to do some other kind of work that gave them the experience to comment on a particular subject. Anyone in the categories mentioned above could be a paid commentator. And finally, bloggers. In almost every case, blog posts represent bloggers' opinions. Some bloggers may do independent, fact-based research, but normally bloggers are informal opinion writers. Some bloggers may have widely respected qualifications on the subject area that they blog about, but remember, anyone can put up a blog. Always check their About Me section and then verify the information you see there, which means go to another website. Find out if this person is really who they say they are. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense. And if you need any help with anything, let me know.